The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breath. Eleanor stood by the kitchen window and watched the garden Richard once loved. The roses needed trimming. The little wooden bench needed paint. She told herself she would fix those things soon, but she knew she wouldn't. Not yet. Grief makes even small tasks heavy. A car door shut outside. Eleanor wiped her hands on a towel and opened the front door. Mark, her son-in-law, stood there with a bright smile and a stack of flattened boxes under his arm. "Morning, Mom," he said. He always called her Mom. It was kind. It also pressed on a tender place in her chest. "Thought I'd help you clear the attic. Make some space." Eleanor nodded. "If you like." Her voice sounded thin. She had not been in the attic since Richard died 8 months ago. She knew what waited there: dust, old tools, the smell of oil and paper, and the boxes Richard stacked so neatly along the wall. He had labeled everything in his small, neat handwriting. Winter coats, camping gear, photos, records. He said every box had a story. Mark carried ladder in and climbed up. Boards creaked. Dust drifted down like gray snow. Eleanor made tea. She told herself she would help, but her hands shook when she reached for the mugs, so she set them down and took a deep breath. Above her came the sounds of work. Tape ripping, boxes sliding, a quick cough. Mark hummed a tune from the radio. It sounded cheerful and wrong. Richard hummed too, but he hummed when he was making something new. A birdhouse, a picture frame. He didn't hum when he threw things away. "Careful," Eleanor called up. "Some of Richard's things are up there." "I'll keep the good stuff," Mark said. "Don't worry. I'll sort it." She brought the tea to the bottom of the ladder and waited. Mark came down with a small box tucked under his arm. He set it by the door. "Just junk," he said. "Old papers and broken jars. I'll take them to the dump. You shouldn't have to deal with this." Eleanor opened her mouth, then closed it. She wanted to say, "Wait, let me look." But she felt silly. She hated being the old woman who could not let go. She nodded instead. "Thank you, dear." He smiled and went back up. Outside, the weather shifted. A pale sun drifted behind clouds, and the air carried a thin chill. Eleanor wrapped her sweater tighter and listened. More boxes. More tape. More humming. She stood very still and pressed her palm to the cool wall. A memory rose without warning. Richard's hand, warm on the small of her back, guiding her through the attic when they first moved in. "One day," he said, "we'll fill this place with things we love." They had. And now the things were leaving. When Mark finished, he carried 3 big boxes to his car and loaded them into the trunk. He moved quickly, like a man on a mission. "I'll dump these now," he said. "No need to look through it all. It's just clutter." Eleanor stared at the trunk. One of the lids sat crooked, and the corner of a photograph peeked out. Richard's smile, young and easy beside a lake. She knew that picture. It was from their first camping trip. Her throat tightened. "Leave that one," she said softly. Mark paused. "Which one?" "The one with the picture," she said. "Please." He looked at the boxes, then back at her. He hesitated, not unkind, just impatient in the way busy people are. "Okay," he said at last. He pulled that box out and set it near the garbage bin by the curb. "I'll come back for the rest tomorrow. Don't worry, Mom. You don't need old junk. New memories are better." He kissed her cheek and drove away. Eleanor stood in the doorway long after the car turned the corner. The wind lifted the lid of the box by the curb and let it fall again with a dull flap. She made herself move. Step by step, she walked to the box and knelt. The concrete was cold through her thin house shoes. She lifted the lid. The smell of attic dust and cedar oil rose up, familiar and sharp. Inside lay a scatter of photographs bundled with string, a tin of screws, a folded flannel shirt, and a small wooden box with a brass lock. The wood had darkened with age. Eleanor brushed a thumb over the top. She knew this box. It used to sit under Richard's workbench. When she asked what it was, he always smiled and said, "Just tax papers." He never let anyone move it. Her breath went tight. She slid the wooden box out and held it in both hands. It felt heavier than it looked, like it carried a weight that had nothing to do with wood. She stared at the brass lock. There was no key. A car drove past. A dog barked. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. The world went on, blind to the moment in her driveway. Eleanor lifted the rest of the box. Old letters in Richard's handwriting. Receipts. A brochure for a bank she didn't recognize. She traced his neat signature with the tip of her finger. The letters shook. A gust of wind tugged the photograph on top. A picture of Richard at his workbench, tools lined like soldiers behind him. He had that small half-smile that meant he was keeping a secret, the kind of secret that was really a surprise for her. A birdhouse painted the color of cornflowers. A ring he fixed after she bent it. Good secrets. Safe ones. She carried everything inside, set the big box on the kitchen table, and placed the wooden one in front of her. The house felt different now. Not lighter. Not yet. Just awake. Like a door inside had opened. Eleanor made tea because tea was a ritual and rituals keep hands from shaking. She sat with the steam in her face and tried to decide. Open the wooden box? Wait. Ask someone for help? But who? Her daughter, Claire, worried too much. Mark would throw out what he didn't understand. And Margaret, no. Not Margaret. A cold thread slid through her when she thought of her sister's careful voice and careful eyes. Let me handle the finances, Margaret had said years ago when Richard's business failed. You rest. I'll take care of you. Eleanor had been grateful. Maybe she still was. Maybe. She picked up the wooden box again. She turned it over. On the bottom right corner, the varnish was thin, rubbed away by years of being pulled from its hiding place and pushed back again. She pressed there with her nail and felt a tiny ridge. A memory flashed. Richard at the bench late at night, the small lamp on, his shoulders narrow with worry. He looked up quickly when she came in and smiled too big. Couldn't sleep, he said. Go back to bed, Elle. I'll be there soon. The clock on the stove clicked from 11:59 to 12 o'clock. The house ticked with it, with settling pipes sighing. Eleanor stood, crossed to the hallway, and lifted the frame from wall, the picture from their 25th anniversary. On back, she ran her fingers along the cardboard until she felt it, a strip of old tape, stiff with age. Beneath it, something small and hard. She peeled the tape back with slow care. A tiny key dropped into her palm and rang against her wedding band with a sound like a bell. Eleanor stared at key. Her hands were not shaking now. They were steady, the way they were when she iced cakes for the church bake sale, the way they were when she held Richard's hand as he took his final breath. She sat at the table, slid the key into the brass lock, and stopped. Not yet. She closed her eyes. Richard, she whispered into the quiet kitchen, if there is something I should know, help me be brave. When she opened her eyes, the garden outside was darker, but the room felt brighter. She turned the key. The lock clicked, a small, honest sound, like a truth finally choosing to speak. Eleanor lifted the lid. Inside the wooden box, there was a neat stack of papers tied with twine, a small cloth pouch, and a yellowed envelope with her name on it. For Eleanor, only if you must. The words were in Richard's careful handwriting. Seeing it felt like hearing his voice in the next room. Her heart lifted and then sank, all in one breath. She touched the envelope with 2 fingers. The paper was soft from age. For a long moment, she didn't open it. She looked at the other things first, as if warming her hands before a fire. There were bank slips from years ago. Names of banks she didn't recognize. Dates written in ink that had almost faded. 1984, 1985, 1991. There were notes in the margins. Meet E, and call M after papers signed. She didn't know who he was. M could be many people. She didn't want it to be who she feared. Eleanor set the slips aside and opened the cloth pouch. Inside were 2 silver keys on a tiny ring and a square metal card, like a bank card but heavier. On the back was a number and a single word, hold fast. She had never seen a bank with that name. Or had she? The word tickled something in her memory, but it did not come clear. Finally, she slid her finger under the flap of the envelope. The glue gave with a dry whisper. She unfolded the letter carefully. The paper smelled faintly of cedar and old books. My dearest Eleanor, it began. She stopped and shut her eyes. It was him. Not just his handwriting, but his plain, steady way of speaking. No extra words. No drama. A man who built things with his hands and his silence. If you're reading this, it means I did not find the courage to tell you while I was alive. I am sorry for that. I kept a secret to protect you. I am not proud of the hiding, but I would do the protecting again. Her breath grew shallow. She read on, slow and exact, the way she used to read recipes so the cake would rise. The company did not go bankrupt the way I said. We sold it. I signed the sale with my partner, Edward Lane, on a day I told you I was at the accountant's. I sent the funds into an account we held in Edward's name because I was afraid. Not afraid of you. Afraid of your sister. Eleanor's eyes jumped to the next line before she was ready. Margaret pressed me when the business was in trouble. She wanted control. She said she could save us if I turned everything over. I did not trust her. I made a choice I thought would keep you and Claire safe. I should have told you. I was ashamed of the lie even as I told it. After the sale, Margaret found a way into our papers anyway. Money began to move. I could not prove it without starting a war inside your family. You loved her. I chose silence and watched you pay the cost. This is the part one cannot forgive myself for. Eleanor's hand covered her mouth. The kitchen light hummed. Outside, the wind pushed a branch against the window with a soft, regular tap. Tap, tap, tap. She sat very still and kept reading. In this box are slips and letters that show where the money went. Some of it is still there. Some of it is not. Edward owes me a favor. He owes you more. If I am gone, take these papers to a lawyer you trust and ask her to contact Edward Lane. His number is on the back of the metal card. If you face Margaret, do it with a witness and do not go alone. I am sorry to put this on your shoulders. I wanted to fix it myself, but time ran ahead of me. The letter ended without a neat goodbye. That was like him too. He would fix a chair to the last nail and then stand back with his hands on his hips, quiet and done. Eleanor lowered the paper. The clock ticked. The tea had gone cold. For a few seconds, she heard nothing but the blood in her ears. She felt two things at once. The relief that Richard had not failed the family the way everyone said, and the sharp, bruising hurt that her own sister might have helped build the lie. Her mind flew back through years and found small moments she had filed away and forgotten. Margaret's gentle voice. Sign here, Elle. It's just a form. You know I'll take care of you. Margaret's careful smile when they sold the lake cabin. We have no choice, Elle. Nothing left. Margaret's new car the following spring. A good deal, she had said, laughing. Lucky me. Eleanor stood and walked to the sink, bracing herself on the edge with both hands. She felt a slow, quiet anger rise, the kind that does not shout. It felt like a heavy door inside her, finally pushing open. She went back to the table and read the letter again, this time with a pencil in her hand. She wrote down the names, the dates, the instruction about the card. She turned the metal card over and found a tiny number etched near the edge, almost hidden, L042. On the back of the letter, in Richard's tidy script, there were two more lines she had missed. Keys, safe deposit at Holdfast Bank, Wilton Street. Card is access. Use with counsel only. Tell Sandra Patel. She is fair. Sandra. Eleanor knew that name. Sandra was the daughter of one of Richard's old co-workers, now a lawyer in town. She had helped Eleanor with paperwork after the funeral. Sandra's hands were steady. Her eyes were kind and sharp at once. A small tremor started in Eleanor's shoulders. She sat down again and folded her hands in her lap until the tremor passed. Something else lay at the bottom of the box. It was a photograph, the same workbench picture, but not the one from the attic box. This one had writing on the back, "For the day you're stronger than me." She smiled without meaning to. "Oh, Richard," she said, her voice thin and warm at the same time. "Look at me. I'm trying." She gathered the papers into neat piles, receipts here, letters there, the card and keys in the pouch. She slid the letter back into its envelope and put it in her sweater pocket, close to her skin. She made a copy of the letter on the old printer by the hallway because something in her said, "Always keep one more than you need." She put the copy under the sugar tin. If anyone came, they would not see it. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Claire. "How are you, Mom? Mark said he helped. Proud of you for letting things go. Love you." Eleanor stared at the words. She typed slowly. "Thank you, dear. I found some things of your father's. We can talk tomorrow. Love you more." She did not send the photo of the wooden box. She did not mention Margaret. Not yet. Claire loved her aunt. This would tear her. Rain began, soft and even, drawing silver lines down the glass. Eleanor turned off the kitchen light and let the rain be the only sound. She carried the wooden box to the bedroom and slid it under the bed, against the back leg where it would not move. The keys and card she put in her handbag. The original letter stayed in her pocket. She did not want to be more than an arm's reach from it. In the hallway she paused at the family pictures. Richard at the lake. Claire on her first day of school. Eleanor and Margaret as girls, bare feet in the creek, heads tipped together. She reached up and touched the edge of the frame with 2 fingers. "Why?" she whispered to the girl in the photo. The girl had no answer. By the time she returned to the kitchen, the rain had deepened. The house was dim. Eleanor sat and wrote a short list on the back of an old grocery receipt. Call Sandra in the morning. Ask about Holdfast Bank, safe deposit. Do not tell Margaret. Make tea. She smiled at the last line. Some habits were anchors. Before bed, she walked to the front door and checked the lock. She drew the bolt and set the chain. When she turned, she saw the box by the curb through the thin curtains. The one Mark had left behind. The lid flapped softly in the rain. Tomorrow she would bring it in and dry what she could. Tonight, the important part was already safe. She went to the bedroom and lay down on top of the quilt, still in her sweater. The letter rested under her palm. She listened to the rain on the roof and let her mind make a new path through old memories. Not the path where her husband failed and her sister saved them. A truer path. Harder. Brighter at the end. In the dark, she spoke into the quiet. I'll go to Sandra, she said. I'll be brave. The words felt solid, like stepping stones underfoot. Sleep came late, but when it came, it was clean. And when morning pressed a pale square of light against the curtains, Eleanor was already sitting up, the letter in her hand, the keys in her pocket, and a single thought in her chest, steady as a drum. Get ready. Morning came gray and quiet. Eleanor made tea and sat at the table with the letter in front of her. She ran a finger along the edge of the paper the way one might trace a map. Then she picked up her phone and dialed. Sandra Patel's office, a calm voice said. This is Eleanor Matthews, she replied. I need to see Ms. Patel. It's about my husband. And my sister. There was a pause, then the voice softened. Come in at 10, Mrs. Matthews. She'll make time. Eleanor dressed in her neat navy coat, the one Richard always said made her look strong. She slipped the letter into a fresh envelope and put the keys and metal card in her handbag. Before leaving, she wrote a note for herself on the counter. Tell the truth. Show the proof. Breathe. The town looked washed by the night's rain. Puddles held bits of sky. Outside the law office, a maple dropped yellow leaves like small coins. Inside, the place smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. Sandra came out to meet her, sleeves rolled, hair pinned back, eyes steady. Eleanor, she said, taking her hands. Come in. They sat at a small wooden table. Eleanor set down the envelope, the bank slips, the pouch, and finally the metal card. She told the story from the attic to the letter. She did not dress it up. She did not rush. She told it the way Richard would have built a chair, one true piece at a time. Sandra listened without interrupting. When Eleanor finished, the room felt heavier and clearer at once. May I? Sandra asked, touching the letter. Please. Sandra read in silence. Then she took a slow breath. This is detailed. Dates, names, instructions. And this card, Holdfast Bank, Wilton Street. That's a private bank downtown. Old, discreet. They still keep safe deposit boxes. The initials on these slips match Edward Lane's signature on a few public filings from the 80s. I can check that. She looked up. Eleanor, I believe your husband. These documents look real. Eleanor's eyes burned. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth and nodded. He was an honest man who made one hard choice. He should have told me, but he was trying to keep peace. And Margaret? Sandra asked gently. Eleanor folded her hands. Margaret took over the books when the business failed. After that, money disappeared. She told me we were lucky to keep the house. She told me to sell the lake cabin. She said there was nothing left. Sandra tapped a line on the bank slip. This transfer here, 3 months after the supposed bankruptcy, matches a deposit into a shell account I can likely trace. If your sister moved funds, we may find her trail. But first, we secure what still exists. She slid the card back to Eleanor. Step 1. We go to Holdfast and open the box listed on this card. Step 2. We contact Edward Lane. Step 3. If the evidence is clear, we apply to freeze any related accounts. Eleanor sat up straighter. I don't want to hurt anyone. I want the truth. And I want my husband's name clean. That is exactly what we will do, Sandra said. And we will do it quietly. They drove together to Holdfast Bank. The building was stone and serious, with a brass door that reflected the street like a dark mirror. Inside, a clerk with careful manners led them to a private room after Sandra presented her card and a letter of representation. Do you have the access key and card? The clerk asked. Eleanor placed the pouch on the table. The 2 silver keys chimed softly when she tipped them into her palm. The clerk compared numbers, nodded, and guided them to the vault. The air felt cooler there. Rows of small doors lined the walls like a tidy city. At box L042, The clerk inserted his master key and stepped back. Your key, ma'am. Eleanor's hand was steady. The lock turned with a resistant click. The door opened. Inside sat a thin metal drawer. Together, she and Sandra carried it to the table. Take your time, the clerk said and left them alone. Eleanor lifted the lid. Inside were more papers, sealed in clear sleeves to protect them. On top lay a short note in Richard's hand. If not me, then you and Sandra. Eleanor smiled, a clean, sudden ache in her chest. He knew, she whispered. Sandra sorted the contents. There were the sale documents for the company, signed by Richard and Edward. There were ledgers showing deposits and transfers. There were 2 letters, one from Edward to Richard apologizing for the mess with M.A., and one from Richard to himself, a set of instructions written like a checklist for a man who feared he would forget. Sandra's voice stayed low and even. This is strong. The sale happened. The money existed. Some moved into an account in another name with initials that match Margaret Allen. She flipped a page and frowned gently. And here, Edward writes he kept a portion safeguarded until R. feels safe to bring ye in. Eleanor, a portion may still be recoverable. Eleanor let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Relief and anger mixed like warm and cold water. He did not fail, she said. He was trying. Sandra touched her arm. He was protecting you. They copied the essential records. Sandra took photos and asked the bank to prepare certified duplicates. Then she carefully returned the originals to the box, locked it, and handed the drawer back to the clerk. In the lobby, Sandra made a call from her cell. Mr. Lane? This is Sandra Patel. I represent Eleanor Matthews, Richard's widow. We have your letters and would like to meet. She listened, then covered the receiver and mouthed to Eleanor he'll come. Into the phone she said, Today at 3, my office. Outside, the light had shifted. The maple leaves shone like small lamps. They sat in Sandra's car, doors closed, the city muted around them. What happens now? Eleanor asked. Now we prepare for the meeting, Sandra said. Edward may be an ally. He may be afraid. Either way, we'll get his statement. Then I'll file a motion to freeze any live accounts linked to these transfers. We will not alert Margaret until the freeze is in place. She paused. I also want you to consider safety. If your sister realizes you know, she may come to you first. Do not meet her alone. Eleanor looked out the window at people crossing the street, carrying bread, coffee, small lives. She will come, she said. When things slip, Margaret gets busy. She turned back. I won't open my door without calling you. Good, Sandra said. And Eleanor, call Claire when you're ready, but not yet. We will tell her the truth kindly and with evidence. Eleanor nodded. I don't want Claire to choose sides. I want her to see clearly. They drove back to the office and spread the copies on the table like a careful map. At 2:50, a tall man with gray hair and a tired suit stepped in. He looked at Eleanor as if he recognized a photograph. Mrs. Matthews, he said. I'm Edward Lane. I should have come sooner. His voice held regret the way an old floor holds a creak. He sat and folded his hands. He did not reach for the papers. He did not pretend not to know. I did what Richard asked, he began. He wanted you safe from your sister. He was proud, but he was scared. He asked me to hold a portion back in my name in case things turned ugly. When he got sick, I told him to tell you. He said he would. I'm sorry he didn't. I'm more sorry I didn't push harder. Sandra slid a letter toward him. This is your note about it. May tell us what happened. Edward nodded. Margaret Allen came to me after the sale. She said she represented Richard. She had access codes I thought only he had. She said the family agreed the funds should be moved for tax reasons. I believed her too easily. When I realized it wasn't right, I blocked the rest. The blocked portion is still in a trust that can be released to you with a court order or my affidavit. I'll sign it. I should have done this years ago. Eleanor listened without moving. The anger in her chest settled into something clearer, a line to follow, a work to do. Thank you, she said simply. By the time Edward signed his statement and left, the sun had dropped behind the buildings. The room held the soft light of late day, the kind that makes edges gentle and decisions firm. Sandra stacked the papers. We have enough to file a freeze, she said. By tomorrow, the court can issue a temporary order. After that, we'll notify Margaret. Eleanor stood and smoothed her coat. She felt tired and awake at once. There is one more thing, she said. Mark told me Margaret visited Richard a lot in his last months. She was kind to him. She brought soup. She took out his trash. I thought she was loving him. Now I think she was watching. Sandra met her eyes. Then she will feel this coming. We stay ahead. They walked to the door together. At the threshold, Sandra squeezed Eleanor's hand. You are doing a brave, hard thing, she said. Go home. Lock your door. I'll call when the papers are filed. Outside, the streetlights flicked on one by one. Eleanor drove home slow. The house met her with its familiar creaks and its waiting quiet. She set the kettle on and took the family photo from the hallway again. Richard's smile looked less like a secret now and more like a promise kept late but kept well. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. We need to talk. M. Eleanor stared at the single letter. She put the phone face down on the table, breathed in steam from the cup, and whispered the words that had carried her all day. Get ready. The next morning was cold and bright. The sky looked washed clean. Eleanor sat at the table with her tea when her phone rang. It's Sandra, the voice said. Good news. The judge signed the temporary freeze order at 8:15. Any account linked to those transfers is locked. We'll serve notice today. I'm driving over now. Keep your door locked. Eleanor thanked her and hung up. She felt something new rise in her chest. Not anger. Not fear. Just steadiness. She slipped Richard's letter into her sweater pocket and checked the chain on the door. At 9:02, someone pounded on the wood so hard the hall mirror rattled. Eleanor, open the door. Now. It was Margaret's voice, tight, sharp, not sweet at all. Eleanor took a breath. She walked to the door, turned on the porch light camera, and left the chain in place. She opened the door a little. I can hear you, she said. What do you need? Margaret stood on the porch in a neat coat and perfect hair, but her eyes were wild. What did you do? She hissed. My bank called me. They froze my account by mistake. Tell them to fix it. It was not a mistake, Eleanor said. Her voice was calm. Please step back from my door. Margaret's mouth twisted. You don't even understand what you've done. Richard would be ashamed of you. Eleanor felt the sting of those words, but let them pass. Richard left me a letter, she said softly. With dates. With names. With your initials. He asked me to be brave. I'm doing that. Margaret laughed in a harsh little burst. A letter? Please. He was confused at the end. You know that. She leaned closer. You are confused now. Give me whatever he left. I'll sort it out. Like I always do. Eleanor kept her hand on the door. You won't sort me anymore, she said. Tires crunched on the driveway. Sandra's car pulled up, and she stepped out with a folder and a man in a gray jacket. Good morning, Sandra called, voice steady. Ms. Allen, I'm Sandra Patel, counsel for Mrs. Matthews. This is Mr. Haynes, a process server. We're here to serve you a temporary freeze order. Margaret turned, color draining from her face. You can't do this without proof. We have proof, Sandra said. We'll show it in court. For now, please accept service. She held out the papers. Mr. Haynes set a second copy on the porch rail when Margaret refused to take them. Service complete, he said, and stepped back. Margaret looked from the papers to Eleanor, then back to Sandra. You're going to embarrass the family, she said. Is that what you want? After all I've done for you. Eleanor opened the door a little wider, so her words would carry on the porch camera. What have you done for me, Margaret? She asked. List it. I want to hear you list it. Margaret's mask slipped. Her voice dropped into its true shape, hard, fast, angry. I kept this family from losing everything when Richard made stupid choices. I moved money where it needed to go. I signed what had to be signed. I talked to his partner when he was too proud to do it. I fixed it. Sandra's eyes flicked to the camera blinking blue on the doorframe. She did not smile, but a line in her face eased. Thank you for saying that clearly, she said. We'll include your statement in our filing. Margaret realized too late what she had done. Her mouth worked. She reached for the papers and shoved them back at Sandra. None of that is true. I didn't say that. It's recorded, Sandra replied. You're on notice. Do not contact my client again. All further contact goes through me. For a heartbeat, no one moved. A bird called from the maple. A car passed. The world kept turning. Margaret leaned in again, frantic now. Elle, listen to me. Claire will hate you if you do this. Think of your daughter. Eleanor's hand tightened on the door, but her voice stayed gentle. I am thinking of my daughter. She deserves the truth about her father. Sirens sounded faint in the distance. 2 short beats and then silence. Margaret's eyes flicked toward the street. She stepped back and smoothed her coat like nothing had happened. This isn't over, she said, and walked fast to her car. Sandra waited until the car turned the corner. Then she looked at Eleanor and nodded toward the porch camera. That helped, she said. It's an admission. Not complete, but enough to support intent. Eleanor felt her knees wobble. Sandra put a hand on her arm. Sit, she said. They sat in the living room with sunlight falling across the rug like water. Sandra opened her folder. The judge granted the freeze for 14 days. We'll move to extend it. Edward signed his affidavit last night. He's prepared to transfer the safeguarded portion into a court-controlled account. He also gave us copies of the authorization letters Margaret used. They don't match Richard's signature. We'll add a forensic report. Eleanor nodded slowly. He tried to tell me, she whispered, thumb pressing the edge of the letter in her pocket. He told me in the only way he knew. Sandra's phone buzzed. She read the screen and looked up. The bank just confirmed the freeze is in place, she said. We got it in time. A transfer request hit at 8:10. They blocked it. She met Eleanor's eyes. Your sister was trying to move the rest this morning. Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment. The hurt came like a wave and then broke, leaving a clear shore behind it. I needed to know what she would choose when pressed, she said. Now I do. There was a soft knock at the back door. Eleanor's neighbor, Mrs. Ruth Alvarez, peeked in. You all right, honey? She asked. I heard raised voices. I was on my porch. Eleanor smiled. I'm all right, Ruth. Thank you for checking. Ruth stepped inside and patted Eleanor's hand. I've seen that sister of yours act sweet for years, she said, voice low. But sugar can hide poison. I'll sign a statement if you need it. I heard enough through the hedge. Sandra thanked her and took her number. When Ruth left, the house fell quiet again. Not heavy quiet this time. Clean quiet. Eleanor opened the letter and laid it on the coffee table. The paper caught the light. He wrote, if not me, then you and Sandra, she said. He knew you would stand with me. I will, Sandra said simply. The rest of the day moved like careful clockwork. Sandra filed the porch recording and Edward's affidavit. The court stamped a notice to appear. A detective from the Financial Crimes Unit called to say he would review the material for possible charges. Sandra kept her tone even with him. Eleanor kept her hands busy, washing cups, folding a throw, watering the rosemary by the sink. Small, ordinary things that made a shape around the big thing. Near evening, Claire called worried. Mom? Aunt Margaret said something weird happened at your house. Are you okay? Eleanor took a breath. I'm okay, love, she said. There are things I need to tell you. I want you to hear them from me, and I want Sandra there so we can explain the papers. Can you come tomorrow? Claire hesitated. Aunt Margaret said. I know what she said, Eleanor replied gently. Come tomorrow. Bring Mark. I'll make tea. We'll talk slowly and clearly. No shouting. Just truth. Okay, Claire said softly. I'll be there. After the call, twilight pooled in the corners of the room. Sandra packed her folder. At the door, she turned. Eleanor, today was hard, and you were steady. That matters. I'll text when the court confirms the extended freeze. When the house was quiet again, Eleanor lit the lamp by the fireplace and took Richard's photo from the shelf. The glass reflected her face beside his. We're almost there, she told him. Your name will be clean. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sandra glowed on the screen. Update. The court accepted Edward's affidavit and the porch recording. Extended freeze granted for 60 days. We proceed. Eleanor let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The house felt lighter, as if a long, tight band had been cut. She went to the front door, opened it, and stood on the threshold. The air was cool and smelled like leaves and damp earth. Across the street, a porch light clicked on. Somewhere, a radio played a slow song from years ago. Eleanor closed the door and slid the chain into place. She set the kettle on, reached into her pocket, and touched the letter one more time. The paper was warm now, warmed by her own body, by the day's work, by the truth finally standing up straight. Get ready, she whispered, not as a warning this time, but as a promise to herself for what came next, telling her daughter, healing what could be healed, and letting go of what could not. The kettle sang. She smiled, poured 2 cups, and set one by Richard's picture out of habit. Then she sat in the quiet, hands around the warm mug, and let the peace come in.